Hello everybody, this is your girl Nexus Speaks, and on this episode we are going to be covering the Entebbe raids. As well, we're going to be touching on the topic of the different regions within the African continent and based on my experience, where I think the status of the continent is right now, and the patterns that I can recognize, and the indicators I use to, judge corruption in a very layman term. First, we'll start with the Entebbe raids. So, historically, the Entebbe raids, let me share my screen. But there's no echo. Don't sense an echo, so it should be good. Okay. Here we go. Let's get into it. So the Entebbe raids occurred in July 3rd to 4th, 1976. Mind you, Kenya gained its independence not too far from that year. So, what basically happened was a flight was hijacked, a French flight that held 103 hostages, Israeli hostages, that were flying from Israel to France, but they stopped in Athens, and that's where the flight was hijacked, by two different parties. What prompted this was the Israeli government in operation, because I don't think Israel was just completely established. It was in process of getting established as a country. They kidnapped 40 Palestinians. So, in response to that, the Liberation Party, Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine, and the Red Army faction of Germany hijacked the plane carrying the Israeli hostages, and they stopped at Uganda. So, the hijackers had to release the passengers who weren't Israeli, because that flight, it was a French flight airline. So obviously not everybody there were a part of the Israeli government or military. But in process, basically, 258 passengers were released of no Jewish descent, but 53 militias from Israel were released and imprisoned. So, later, Israel decided to carry out operation with the help of the United States, and they needed access to airspace. To access Uganda, they needed airspace access from a neighboring East African country. So, they did get the access. The access was via the Kenyan government, and that's how they were able to go in and free the Israeli hostages. Although there is no clarity on whether they ended up freeing the Palestinian hostages, but long story short, a lot of Ugandans died, a lot of Kenyans died. In total, I think it was around the 400s, and I'm most certainly sure a lot of Palestinians died. Why am I mentioning this story? So, this story highlights something, right? Kenya gained its independence. Let me just double check. Right here. $1963. So that wasn't even a whole 20 years later that they decided to side with post-colonial factions to betray a neighboring country. And East Africa has shown a repeated pattern of this. Now, one might ask, well, why is this important? Well, Idi Amin was one of the realist leaders within East Africa, along with Nyerere. We've had very few, but when we've had them, it's been a huge blessing, right? But Jomo Kenyatta decided to betray Idi Amin. This pattern would soon again repeat itself with Rwanda and Uganda, and its relations to Congo, the country of Congo. There is 54 countries within the continent of Africa, and about 3 to 4 more, there could be more than that, islands that can be recognized as countries by themselves. I don't know why they're not added. Seychelles, Mauritius, Zanzibar, and Canary Islands. So Africa is quite huge, quite grand. Kilometer only. For the equator, it's 33 million kilometers. That's only horizontally. So multitudes of continents within themselves and countries within themselves could be fit inside Africa. And not only that, it's the most resource rich. Galactically, it's the most representative of this cosmos because of all the biodiversity it has. And time again, it just keeps on getting betrayed, but cheated out of its place mainly, and convinced that it should self-abandon, right? So even with the Rwanda genocide and the apartheid, it's been proven that the Israeli government funded that, along with France, along with the United States. So the questions we need to ask ourselves is, how long will the powers that are in place in Kenya that profit off of this, how long do they have? And how can we replace them, right? As well, when it comes to the binary of East Africa versus West Africa, although there's no versus, East Africa has proven that it's in its inception, and I think it's more so because of the pressure of being connected to Asia and Europe at a very up close and personal type of stance, like literally sharing borders, sharing seas, sharing rivers with these other continents. It's always felt the pressure, right? But hasn't been burdened, from what I can tell, too much with accumulation of viable resources. I know the resources are there, but the question is, have they been viable? Obviously, that's not Congo's story. We can see that, but it's only coming out recently that there are countries that you would have never thought have more to give that actually have more to give. And I just think that's the nature of Africa. Luckily, West Africa is not as corrupt. And I'll be touching on this on a future video addressing Nigeria. But it's a stark contrast when you see how many leaders have been revolutionaries and have arisen and got up per count, in both regions. And with the topic of Nigeria, I want all Nigerians to know we have not forgot about you. We're not sick of you. I'm so proud to see that you guys have taken, your name back, your power back, your seat back. And it usually just happens via the youth. And I'm glad that the youth are highly represented when it comes to these things and make themselves represented mainly. Because that I think that's just the unfortunate consequence of having to stand up for something, and this has been mainly highlighted by the Black liberation movements within the United States. The first protests are not adults at all. So let's touch on Nigeria, and then we'll segue to the AES. So Nigeria, their leader, Tinubu, came out to the United Nations not so long ago, stating that he is a CIA asset, stating that he was recruited whilst in America by the CIA to lead a whole nation. You know, not saying that he has minimal experience, but that he did have pending cases against him within the United States that are very questionable. Things such as running a drug ring. So, with the Nigerian people knowing about this, if they do know, I know this might be news to a bunch of Nigerian citizens, and even finding this information can be quite, tedious. But would they have elected him? I don't think so. And I think that's for the gotcha of the imperialist system in relation to Africa and even Asia, that they know that we're going to trust what we perceive to be a trusted face sometimes without looking deeper. And that is something that I'm glad has been highlighted for us to work on, because there's no reason that should be. But when it comes to the election cycles within Africa, I do think they are up for questioning. They need to be questioned, because the only way, for the most part, a leader can gain access to higher levels of schooling and higher levels of education sometimes is if their family is a part of the bourgeoisie. The bourgeoisie are never really for the people, and the bourgeoisie are also connected to imperialist systems out of the continent. So you have to question what values are being instilled in these leaders from early, I'll connect back with part 2. Mic testing 1 2 2. Okay. Testing 1 2 1 2. But as I was saying, the leaders have to be from, or initially from, therefore consequentially a part of the bourgeoisie. And if they're not, that's where you worry. Unless they're military general, of course, as we've seen, a lot of them have proven themselves internationally to be great leaders. But we've had some leaders where even on the smallest things that they speak out on, it has warranted for their elimination according to the imperialist powers. And I just love how Nigeria knows that it deserves better. Because I was waiting for that. I was getting worried there for a minute. Because I was like, surely the AS leaders raising the bar wouldn't make the Nigerian populace of people feel like, okay, now is the time to cower when our neighbors are leading revolutions. I was like, no way. As well, seeing the stark contrast of Burkina Faso's leader, Ibrahim Traoré, incentivizing the Galamsey, who are illegal miners, who are also citizens, for the most part, of that said country, incentivizing them to continue mining and also get paid higher returns than, via the government. They're getting paid via the government to mine, but higher returns than whichever source, whichever wholesaler they were initially selling to. And then we turn over to Ghana and see that they are, instead of doing a system like that, they're punishing the galaxy, the illegal miners, and actually putting the lives of their citizens at risk via inviting these imperialist powers in to help them with said issue, when next door someone has already demonstrated a solution, step by step by step, on how to resolve that. And the same imperialist power is getting more of an incentive via Ghana giving them access to their land, therefore to their borders. They're getting incentive to get access to the Sahelian Alliance, the Alliance of Sahel States, right? Which is what Europe has always wanted right now, especially because they don't want to die in the cold. They don't want to freeze. Niger took back its uranium. Uranium was one of the more than 50% of the reason why even France had power, electricity, ability to light their light bulbs. And Niger said, we're taking that back. And initially, when France was the one controlling all of that, Niger used to sell its uranium 1 gram, 72 cents, when on the US stock exchange and the global market, it is $82 per gram. And guess what Niger now is doing? Profiting as they should have always, because it is their resources. And with the advent of all of this, France has been working hard at campaigns, throwing money around to make sure that propaganda reaches the eyes and ears of many people regarding the AS, the Alliance of Sahel States. So if you see any propaganda ad-mouthing Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, just know it's false. Off the bat, just know it's false. Do your own research. Don't just believe me. Actually look into it. And look into who's funding those sources as well. It's about that simple. Because when we let things like this slide, which I'm so happy that around 2022 we did not. We stood up for Graham Suarez. We just stood up for the noble leaders. The leaders we deserve. Let's make sure we do that again. Because the way it's looking right now, they're doing just about anything to give them an excuse to get back into those countries. And it's beautiful to see that there's countries that have said, we're not taking this shit anymore, and kicks them out completely. I think we need more of that. I really do. Because there's no way the most richest continent should be the most subservient continent as well. The math's not mathing. Things are not aligned if that happens. The whole direction of the whole world will suffer if that happens. Because less biodiversity and more what? More perversion. So therefore more vanity. Less populations, less healthy populations. More technocracy. More excuse to merge with technology on a physical and biological aspect, which there's nothing wrong with technology. There's nothing wrong with bionic parts. But feeling that either party is not optimal is not the answer, is not the solution. We're made all very meticulously, and that should be respected. So as we take a stance on what we believe in and choose to stand for what we believe in, rather than kneel for what we don't, stay on our knees for what we don't, let's ask ourselves rigorous questions. Let's ask ourselves hard questions on how we navigate not only this world, but tough conversations. Such as, okay, who is really benefiting here? If certain forces maintain dominance that is procured in a way of violence, in a way that is not natural but also is not equitable. You know, who benefits from countries getting to stay lazy? Because it's not that Russia doesn't have what they need. It's not that China doesn't have what they need. They just don't want to have to pay China. They don't want to have to pay Russia. And then on top of that, also pay for labor. They just want to pay quarter of what they would for the resource. And on top of that, cream the top of the milk and get free labor. That's what they've been used to. But Mother Nature has even shown that is not the plot that we need to line ourselves with anymore. So, yeah, Nigeria, we're proud of you. Keep on going. Keep on fighting truth to power. And I'm really proud to see what y'all just did. Because y'all really did inspire Kenya's Gen Z protest. And with the End SARS protest. And I know the result of these protests are not beautiful sometimes. A huge population of people get killed. But I'd rather go out with a smile on my face knowing I stood up for what I believe in and know it's true, rather than live a whole facade, a whole illusion, right? So, yeah, keep at it. We haven't forgot about you. Burkina Faso and Mali in the jar. Thank you for showing us what is possible. Thank you. As well to the citizens of Burkina Faso. First of all, let me introduce myself. This is your girl, Nexus Speaks. And I just want to tell y'all how immensely jealous we are of y'all. Let me say that again. I just want to tell y'all how immensely jealous we out here in the West and in all other countries and nations, how much we're jealous of y'all. Let me reiterate and explain why. The leadership y'all have in your country is literally something that's never been seen before in the 21st century. Like, the systems y'all have in place for education, for manufacturing, for imports, exports, for literally building and sustaining your own economies. It's something that we just want a lick of. We just want to take a little bite into that. We just want to know how it is to know that you're working in a manufacturing plant, processing your own natural goods, at that raising your own country's national index, and it's all counting, and it's all circulating, working in alignment and perfection, as God wants, as God put us here to be in harmony together in that fashion. That is more than sweet. That is more than beautiful. And I really, really, really hope that God preserves and keeps y'all. Because, quite literally, self-determination is one of the things most worth fighting for. Not only as an individual, but as a nation altogether. Different tribes, different languages, different cultural wear, different foods, different sayings, different ways of initiating a soul into this earth, different ways of guiding a soul out of this earth. Y'all harmonize. Y'all still got together for collective agreement, for collective alignment, for collective needs and demands, because we are human, regardless of what garb we choose to wear. And your leaders are a constant reminder of that. Constantly reminding y'all of that. Constantly talking to the youth about that. That level of reverence is something to envy. And I want y'all to just savor that, soak that in, and keep going. Okay? Admiration is beyond infinity. Virtual hug. Because, man, I didn't think I'd see it in this lifetime. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't think I'd see it in this lifetime. I was waiting for steampunk period. I was waiting for technocracy. I was waiting for Elon Musk to be the next president or something like that. I just wanted the timeline to happen quickly so that if the Earth explodes, I'll say, I got to see the end of it. You know? But Mother Earth, the Earth is very much alive. And it's so beautiful to see that there's people who care that she's alive, that are willing to cater and tend to her, to the planet we share, regardless of hue, regardless of language, regardless of anything. We share this one planet. And y'all show what Africa is really about. Y'all don't let division from outside forces stir anything in you. Bones of steel. Hearts of gold. Bones of iron, hearts of gold. Come on with it. I really love that in y'all. I love that about y'all. Don't ever stop. Okay? Thank you so much. Because Revelation, just keep on revealing itself. And whoever keep on saying, wow, remembers the starting point. And may we continue on saying, wow. Look now. Look where they are. They just keep on going. They just keep on going. They just keep on going. And may that also propel us to keep on going. Don't pay attention to the hate. You know, right now, with everything going on, even Sudan is getting its liberation. And Sudan is very similar. It's a mirror of a section of West Africa, you know, and East Africa, because Sudan's the type of place where you have people who are my skin tone, people who are lighter, people who are darker, just extreme diversity, without even outsiders being accounted for. But there, in the timeline that hijacked their story was more so of a hierarchy that we've just not been privy to as Africans. Like, we don't operate like that, so I'm glad that y'all didn't choose that for yourselves. Because I'm not gonna lie, Niger, when I was going to school, the president, that corrupt president y'all kicked out, was the one being shown, that light-skinned person. I thought, oh, Niger is just filled with light-skinned people. It's filled with Arabs. You know, I say that beautifully because I have many Arab brothers and sisters, but we see what's going on in North Africa. So, yeah, I'm glad to see that the representation is definitely representing. And yeah, fuck all the lies. Fuck all those who fund the lies. Because we see their disguise. And we see right through it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. AS, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali for activating me. And for activating so many others. Keep it going. Immense love to y'all. I can keep on reciting my love for y'all like endlessly. Just endlessly, 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 endlessly. But all glory returns to God. And I'm so grateful that God let us see y'all. I'm so grateful. Okay, peace.